As a survivor of spiritual abuse, are you ever curious about how your body has been affected by the spiritual abuse that you've experienced? Do you ever wonder in general how something like spiritual abuse can show up in the body? My name is Dr. Felucia. I'm a licensed psychologist and owner of Skill Set Counseling, where I focus on the treatment of OCD, spiritual abuse, and cultural abuse. And in today's video, I'm going to be answering the question, how does spiritual abuse affect the body? Now, this is a pretty extensive topic, so I'm going to go over three brief mechanisms rather, that spiritual abuse can affect the body. People who have been spiritually abused oftentimes have difficulty expressing and acknowledging their emotions, especially certain challenging emotions like anger, sadness, grief, things like that. And the reason why this happens, well, one reason rather, is because of toxic positivity. If you haven't watched my video on toxic positivity in the church, I would encourage you to watch that to get a deeper understanding of toxic positivity. But individuals who have experienced toxic positivity have difficulty experiencing and expressing their emotions because they are shamed for having the normal range of the human experience of emotions. The message that toxic positivity sends, especially in spiritually abusive environments, is that if you experience anything like anger, sadness, anything that's not positive, not only is it bad, but you are a bad person. You are morally deficient or spiritually immature because you experience these emotions. And so what ends up happening is that when people are having these experiences, they cannot acknowledge to themselves or to others that they're having this experience, this emotional experience. And if they do, it's probably very limited. And so how does this show up in the body? Well, when you are having difficulty experiencing or acknowledging certain emotions, you go through something that's known as emotional repression. And emotional repression has several effects on the body. If someone is having difficulty for example, if someone has difficulty with expressing anger, research has shown that they tend to have a higher blood pressure than people who don't. There are other studies as well that show that repressed emotions can lead to decreased immunity. And of course, we know what happens when our immunity is lowered. We, tend to get more sick. The illness may last for a longer period of time. We may have more complications from it. Our immunity is very important. So immunity, it can take a hit. Blood pressure can go up. And there was another study that found that individuals who experience repressed emotions later on in life have an increased risk of cancer and also an increased risk of premature death. And so it's really important for our physical health to be able to acknowledge and experience the full range of emotions. But this isn't encouraged in spiritually abusive environments. And also, it's sometimes people actually get shamed and punished for doing so. And so people from spiritually abusive environments get the message that certain emotions are not good, don't experience them, don't express them. And this can result in several physical problems. Another emotional consequence of spiritual abuse that can lead to something physical is hypervigilance, right? Feeling this feeling of dread, anxiety, like the other shoe is about to drop. You're constantly on the lookout for what might go wrong. And in some ways, in short term, hypervigilance can be helpful. If we're in a situation where there's danger, there's an impending threat, then it's good to be hypervigilant in those situations. But that prolonged hypervigilance can really do a lot of wear and tear on the body. It can result in increased heart rate, elevated blood pressure, digestive issues, and difficulty sleeping, as well as poor memory and poor concentration. And so that state of hypervigilance that people who have been spiritually abused experience can lead to a whole host of other health problems. And this is why it's really important to recognize how you've been affected by spiritual abuse. By the way, if you're finding this content helpful, I want to request for you to like the video, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. And what this does is it helps get the video and similar videos out to those who could benefit from it. So if you wouldn't mind taking a moment right now to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and share the video, I'd really appreciate it. So we've gone over a couple ways that spiritual abuse can affect the body. The first vehicle is through repressed emotions, and that can result in lowered immunity, just all these kinds of challenges, especially increased risk of premature death and cancer. So those are pretty serious. The second one is hypervigilance. The hypervigilance can come from just all the challenges that someone has experienced in the spiritually abusive environment. And that hypervigilance can lead to poor memory, poor focus and concentration, digestive issues, and a whole host of other problems. The third way that spiritual abuse can affect the body is through being overworked. And in spiritually abusive environments, people are often expected to serve beyond a normal capacity. And so basically they're told, if you're not giving pretty much all your time, all your free time, energy, and resources to this spiritual environment, then you are a bad person. People could be shamed, threatened, all these other sorts of things. And so what you find is that when people have been through spiritual abuse, their body can suffer through this vehicle specifically because they're just being overworked all the time. And so asking for long hours of servitude repeatedly without any kind of pay or compensation is going to result in you not being able to attend to your self-care needs, right? So that could involve things like having a poor diet, not even being able to eat, at the right times, or eat in a healthy way because you're so busy basically being in servitude to the spiritually abusive environment, right? And so people who have been through spiritual abuse will talk about how they were just there, in the spiritually abusive environment for hours and hours. They felt hyper vigilant because they could just be called on at a moment's notice and expected to show up. And that can take a toll on the body when you can't care for yourself properly through diet, sleep, and exercise. It's going to show up in the body. And this could be not getting enough sleep. This could be just feeling like you're always racing, feeling like you always have to catch up with something. That goes a little bit back to the hypervigilance, but specifically with the lack of self-care, not having a good diet, not being able to slow down, focus, and attend to what is important to you will have long-term effects on the body. Okay, so I'm going to go over the three again. The first one is hold on a second. Let me try to remember what the first one is. It escaped my mind. I'll go back to number 2 and number 3. So for number 2, hypervigilance, right? And then the third one that I just described now is being overworked and lack of self-care. And then the first one that I talked about was repressed emotions. And so think about it this way. These three can kind of create the perfect storm for our bodies not being able to repair themselves, not being able to heal themselves, fight off illness, and all these other things. Okay. So I hope this information is helpful to you. If you would like to get more information and more resources on how to recover from your spiritual abuse and go on this journey to healing, go to my website, skillsetcounseling.com, click on the orange button, or click on the link in the description box. And that way you can book a free 10-minute consultation with me. All right. And there are also several videos on my YouTube channel that go over related content. One I would especially encourage you to look at is toxic positivity in the church. So I hope you have a day that is filled with peace. Bye-bye.